Hello and welcome to our 34th episode of The Little Inside. My name is still Tobi, and this week we are going to talk about the topic of freedom and dependency. So let's get started right after the intro. So you hear it in many discussions nowadays, and also it's topic of many movies that are rolling at this time, and it's also even very important for whole countries. It's the concept and the idea of freedom. So freedom seems to be something that is really, really important to us. The freedom of speech, the freedom of press, the freedom of, in general, being just independent, right? So the very basic kind of freedom that we consider is the freedom, for example, to receive proper education, or the freedom, maybe just the freedom to be alone for yourself, your privacy, the freedom to decide, the freedom of will. These very basic things are very important to us. So what is this freedom really? What are we really free from, and are we really free? I've been wondering, actually, how free are we really? How independent am I really? So it might look like I'm quite independent, right? For example, right now I have nobody that stands behind the camera. The camera is recording me just all by itself. So I'm quite independent. I don't need anyone to record me. So I'm quite free, but I'm not free of the camera. So in order to record this, I need a camera. So I'm dependent. So this kind of selective freedom, that I'm free from this, but I'm dependent on that. And being independent from somebody, isn't that dependent on that somebody? If there was no somebody, the concept of being independent of a somebody makes no sense. I'm dependent of my parents. Well, actually that shows that we're quite dependent on our parents, are we not? Otherwise, this idea of I'm independent of my parents doesn't make any sense, because this very independency of your parents requires your parents to exist. So it's probably not at all that simple to say I'm free, or this is the land of the free, or something like this. What does it mean? Free from what? Usually we don't question these kind of things, because very quickly it becomes clear that we don't really know what we're talking about very, very often. Sure, there is certain kind of freedoms that we enjoy. For example, the freedom of war. Right here, there's no war going on. But this is always a very selective kind of freedom that we are talking about. And every one of those freedoms that we would mention, like the freedom from war, it is dependent on the existence of war, is it not? Because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense to be free from it if it would not exist. So everything that we're free from it because we're depending on it. Or our freedom is dependent on the existence of that very thing that we are free from. So this whole concept of individuality, I'm so individual, I'm having my own room as a child, I'm growing up in my own room, I can do this by my own, I can do this by myself. And we're very proud of that very often, and I can do this by myself. I can paint this by myself, or I can fix this by myself. I don't need anybody else. I can do this alone. And I can stand out. I can go in competition against other people. I can show that I don't need them. We can do this as a whole country. We can say, our country doesn't need any other country. We are totally independent of all other countries. We're independent and free. So even though there are a few things that we can say that we are free from, the most important thing, namely stress and suffering, we're not really free from. If you have a moment of quietude and you sit alone by yourself and there's no distraction, and very often we see that we're not even free of our own mind, constantly harassing us, coming up with all kinds of thoughts of how we should be, and I'm too distracted, I can't really meditate, I will never get it. We're not free of these thoughts. They just keep coming up and bubble up in our meditation practice. So here's the most basic thing, our own mind. And we have no freedom. The mind does whatever it wants. That's because it is conditioned. It's conditioned by our upbringing, by the parenting that we have experienced, by the education system that we have experienced, by the culture that we grow up in. And then it kind of just goes round and round and it plays its thing. We're not free from that. We're not free from the fact that when someone looks at you the wrong way or says the wrong thing, you have to experience displeasure or anger even. We're not free from that. That if somebody decides to condition you into believing that a red can full of sugary water is fresh and healthy for you, you cannot choose not to feel that this is fresh and healthy because you've seen the advertising. And so if you go through the supermarket, you see that red can, you feel, fresh and healthy. Because it has been conditioned into our mind. It is a whole huge market around that, right? It's advertising or marketing. It's all about conditioning our will, conditioning our choices. There's whole armies of psychologists that are behind Facebook or behind famous apps, that their whole job is to keep you glued to the screen for as long as possible, because with every minute that you spend before that screen, in front of that screen, they make money. They make conversions. So it's in their interest to have you feel that you are free. So I can use whatever I want, I can use this phone, but in reality it is not really the case that we are free. So that there's this sort of illusion of freedom. I have an illusion of choice. I can choose, for example, many different politicians. They're presented in front of me and then I can make my choice. Or I have I can choose between a variety of milk that is in the supermarket. And every one of these packages is designed in a way to condition your will to make you grab it. So all these packages are like, grab me. I'm more fresh. I'm more organic. I have less fat. Only 0% fat. And all that is to condition you to act a certain way. Then it starts with, when we grow up, it starts with our education, our parenting. There's so many people, they're so full of mommy and daddy issues. We all are full of mommy and daddy issues. We all have like a voice of our father and a voice of our mother in our head, constantly talking to us. Some people have been abandoned by their parents. Some people have been spoiled by their parents. Some people have been raised kind of in a balanced way by their parents, but nobody is free of the impact that their education had on them. Also, the impact that their parenting had on them, the impact that the culture had on them. You can put little children into boot camps and teach them to fight against the white man. And you can put a lot of people into a religious school and you teach them that the world has been created by God. And none of those children is really free. They learn these kind of things when they're young and open. And so their mind absorbs these things and they see all the adults around them. They must be saying the truth. They are the adults. They run the show. In fact, it's none of those adults either run the show. They're also all conditioned. We're all conditioned. Our mind is completely conditioned. So it is the way it is. And since I'm not free from my own conditioned mind, I can't really say that I have substantial freedom. I'm not even free from myself. I'm not free from my upbringing. I'm not free from making my own choices, even though it appears that they are my own choices. But they come because I've been, for example, in my case, I've been really fortunate. My choice-making process has been conditioned by people that understand how their mind works. And this is very, very fortunate for me. I'm very lucky in that way, that my own conditioning process is leading towards the freedom from condition, the freedom from conditioning. And to go beyond this conditioning, going beyond this conditioned mind, not getting rid of it, but learning that there is something that is free from this conditioned mind. There's something that there is some space between the observer of the conditioned mind and the conditioned mind. So this is a path that leads towards that kind of freedom from all the conditions, which is a peaceful state. It is not stressful, uncomplicated, simple. But within that conditioned world, the conditioned mind, the conditioned body, the conditioned culture all around, there is no real freedom to be found. And quite obviously, all I can find there is an infinite web of conditioning. It's highly, highly complex. Why we do what we do, our psychology, how it works, our nervous system, how it works, our biology, our cells, how they regenerate, and everything, your mood, the chemicals in our bodies, how they move, how the moon influences how we feel, how so many things have an impact on our emotional, energetic, physical, mental being, that we can't really talk of real freedom in there. Only in a way like, well, I'm free from noisy neighbors right now. There are no noisy neighbors at this moment. I'm free from that. Or I'm free from heat. There's an aircon running and it's cool. In that way, I can say I do have some limited kind of freedom in there. And within that limited realm, probably the most important kind of freedom is to make the choice to act wisely, to act in a way that creates happiness, joy, release. That's a very fortunate circumstance. And it's something to be appreciated. Because at no other place in this world can we find true, lasting freedom but within ourselves. So with that, episode 34 comes to an end. And now you will experience the freedom of episode 34. And as usual, if you have any questions or want to add to the discussion, feel free to write down in the comment section below, or write me an email if you like. And as usual, these little insights are just little reflections. I'm just kind of reflecting a little bit on these concepts such as freedom and dependency as today. Maybe giving rise to some discussion, some meaningful practice that can come out of this. And wish you a wonderful next week, and look forward to see you again next week, next Wednesday, for episode 35. See you then. Bye-bye.